Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Shoes Off Inside. How are you, Kelly Who, Tamlin Tamita?
Hi.
Yeah, everyone doing
so
well?
good.
Good. Yes?
Yeah.
Happy end of Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander month and happy LGBTQIA plus month.
That's
It's
right.
Alphabet Soup month, May and June.
I know.
I can't believe you got all those letters right, Tammy.
I'm impressed.
Always on it.
Practice. It's practice. Oh my God. But
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister, but thank you for recognizing both months. So yes, happy Pride, everyone. So it is June 13th as we are recording this episode, and we decided
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. We decided to make it a special episode because of what today is and what is happening today. Well, what transpired today. And that is former President Donald Trump has been indicted again, and he had to go down to Miami, Florida to be arrested and arraigned on 37 charges of conspiracy and espionage because of all those documents, right, that were found at Mar-a-Lago. Boxes and boxes of documents in his bathroom, in the ballroom.
The bathroom with the chandelier and carpet, it looks like. Yes.
And a really
Who
cheap
puts
shower
carpet in their bathroom?
and
That's
a
so
cheap
gross.
shower curtain. I mean,
And a tissue box with no cover, and then a Walmart shower curtain. Yeah, exactly what you said.
Well, I mean, we can make fun of this like for hours on end because I think it's hilarious. I mean, Mar-a-Lago, the members have to pay like gobs of money to become members, and that's the bathroom. Gross. But anyway, the more serious matter is, of course, what's at hand and what he's been charged with. It's pretty incredible, right? This is a former president of the United States who has now been indicted twice, been impeached twice, been formally convicted for sexual misconduct against E. Jean Carroll. And there's more charges to come later in other cases. So this is not the end because there's January 6th, the insurrection. That's another case that's about to come
They haven't
up.
even started that, huh?
Nope. And
Nope.
Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, is also involved in that one.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack Smith, talk about a guy who is like, just the facts, ma'am. Right? I mean, he is a straight shooter, doesn't fuck around.
Doesn't make any media appearances.
Doesn't say anything until he has to, and he only made that 2-minute speech after the indictment that was unveiled. So this is a straight shooter, but of course Donald Trump has already attacked him and his family, saying he's a terrorist, he's a thug, and all of that. So it's pretty extraordinary, right, ladies? I mean, we are.
I have to admit, full disclosure, I have not been following this for the sake of my mental health. I have not been following this.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's healthy. That's self-preserving. You have to take care of oneself.
Exactly. Yeah. Now I'm obsessed just because it's in my nature. And I know, Tamlin, you have an interest in, politics and all of this stuff too, to a certain extent. So, it is something that it sucks you in. But we also thought, wow, we need to get some perspective here and try to balance things out a little bit. And the perfect person that we invited, for full transparency, we did not plan on speaking to this person because of the Donald Trump indictment.
Not at all. You scheduled this beforehand, right?
Yeah, we scheduled this beforehand, but it just so happened that the day that we're doing this interview happened to be the day that Donald Trump was showing up in court. So the person we're speaking about is Congressman Andy Kim of New Jersey, Democrat, and he's now serving his second term for his district. And he's somebody who I think we all admire for various reasons as an Asian American politician, but also because of how he handled January 6th, the insurrection. He was known for picking up garbage after the insurrection.
Right. He was cleaning up the mess that was made in his suit. Like, that's what he's most known for right now.
He was so heartbroken about what happened to the Capitol because it represents the people, the country, right? So that's the kind of person he is. But we're going to get into it, obviously, further in the interview. But yeah, so we thought, okay, let's turn this episode into talking about what's going on in the country, talking about the state of politics in this country, but hopefully give us some hope to a certain extent, through
Absolutely.
someone like Congressman Kim.
Or re-inspire, reignite, rediscover, because it's always there. Hope is always a glimmer, and we just need to, have her burn a little bit more brighter, especially in these times. So,
in these times. So,
thank you for rounding up Congressman Kim. It was a real surprise to see that he was scheduled for today of all days.
Of all days, exactly. So the timing we thought was pretty darn good. So here is that interview with Congressman Kim. Congressman Andy Kim, welcome to Shoes Off Inside. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Jersey's in the house.
And you are coming to us from DC right now. And I should say, we have to mention, we are recording this on Tuesday, June 13th. So there's something pretty significant going on right now down in Miami, Florida.
What's going on there,
right?
Nate?
I wonder. So as many of us know, former President Donald Trump has been arrested and being arraigned right now in Miami, Florida, indicted on 37 counts, I believe, right, of holding classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, et cetera, et cetera. That 49-page indictment came out last week. And so, I would just love to get the congressman's reaction to this, because it is a continuation of this madness, right? I mean, how else can we describe this?
Yeah, I mean, it's, it's something that I think about over the last couple of years is just how I never thought I would see something like today where a former president is being put forward on indicted on federal charges. But I have to say, we've seen a lot of things over the last couple of years we never thought we'd see. I never thought that, I'd be hiding out in this office on January 6th, unsure what's going to happen to our Capitol and our democracy. I never thought that we'd have a president that questions the election results and brings our democracy to the brink, that we would have a pandemic where we can't have a proper government response to, and so many other things. So it just reinforces that we live in this time when it feels like the impossible is unfortunately possible.
Right.
And it just reminded me, I gave this speech once where I was talking about how, we live in unprecedented times because of all these things. And this woman just came up to me afterwards and just like, I wish I lived in precedented times again. I'm honestly just so tired of all of this stuff constantly happening. So it's crazy. But I have to say, look, it's a solemn day for our country. We should not have to be in this kind of situation, but we have to deal with it. Nobody's above the law. And we got to make sure that we're doing our best to make sure we're trying to ensure that rule of law across our nation.
So even if he is indicted, right?
He has been indicted.
Can still run again? Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot. I'm one of the few people in DC that's not a lawyer, so I don't know all the ins and outs of the left and right limits here. But yes, he's still able to run. I mean, I don't know when this trial is, or if it's going to go to a trial and when that would be. This is, again, we've never had a situation like this before. So we're in a lot of new territory, and that's what adds so much stress to our democracy.
Yeah.
And this was something that I feel like I really came to see over the last couple of years. We had always this understanding of like checks and balances and all this understanding about, how our democracy works. But what we didn't realize all along until the Trump presidency is a lot of this is about norms and behavior. A lot of this is about people who buy into this system and are willing to recognize when certain bounds are overstepped. And we just never really encountered a situation where someone just doesn't believe in any of those norms and is so willing to cross over and bring our country into uncharted territories. And we realize how few teeth we had to some of this, which we're trying to work on to try to address, whether that's about electoral security or about the judiciary or other things like that. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, that's the real reason. I mean, that's pretty much one of the biggest reasons why I stepped up to run for Congress in the first place, is I felt like in 2018, We needed to have some type of check put back in place, and that meant being able to take control of the House of Representatives again, and having a portion of Congress be able to exercise the oversight in that capacity. So that, that was really, something for me that was critical at that moment. And I still believe that still today.
Congressman Kim, before we get to that, because I think that's so important to focus on in terms of someone like you wanting to actually get into the lion's den of politics, because that's what it's become, really. Let's just clarify, right? This is the second time Donald Trump has been indicted. He has been twice impeached. He has been convicted on sexual misconduct against E. Jean Carroll in New York. So the list is quite long in terms of what he's already done and what he could be facing in the future, because there are more legal cases that he's facing as well, including January 6th, right, the insurrection. So just to clarify that point, it's almost becoming normal to watch this former president go through this. And I think that also is dangerous for the public, just to almost become numb to this becoming a normal thing. And so, like you just said, this is unprecedented, and it should be looked upon as, something that we cannot accept, right?
Well, so my question is, what more has to happen for him to not be able to run?
Again, I don't know how the rules. I mean, one thing that we could have done, which didn't happen, as you mentioned, I've been a part of, in just 4 years, I've been a part of 50% of all impeachment votes in our nation's history. I mean, it just kind of gives you a sense of how crazy that is.
Crazy.
But if we were able to convict through the Senate, with the last impeachment after January 6th, I mean, that would have prevented him from being able to run again. But again, I'm not an election lawyer. I probably should dig into this some more, but I'm not sure the exact right answer in terms of all the different intricacies there.
Right, because it seems that people, sorry, Tam, it seems that people lose their right to vote quite easily. I mean, I don't know exactly what it takes. Do you have to actually go to jail? I mean, what exactly do you have to be convicted of to just lose your right to vote? And it seems like he's already done so much that somebody who has done as much as he has probably wouldn't even be able to vote, much less run for president.
Well, let's let Tamlin step in for a second, but just one point. That's why he wants to become president so badly, because he can pardon himself. So he's going to drag this on so that he doesn't actually have to go to trial, or the trial doesn't have to start until he's hoping that he's president again, and then he can get out of it. So
he is the master of manipulation and drawn out litigation.
Correct.
That's his style. That's always been his pattern. The thing that we have to be careful about in terms of saying the words unprecedented, because just being so illuminated by another history and journalism genius wonk, Rachel Maddow, on MSNBC last night, she had gone over through the history of Nixon and Spiro Agnew just on last night's broadcast. So Spiro Agnew was also also indicted for 40 counts of illegal acts. I think it was tax evasion, and the DOJ, the Department of Justice, in a plea deal, allowed him to plead guilty, but with no time in prison. So, but there was a inferred agreement that he would never run for office again. So, but again, the idea that had it gone through, and would he had not been convicted, he would have been still able to run for president, because he was the shoo-in to follow Nixon, as well as the fact that even if he had been convicted and arrested and put into jail, he could have still been a president while in jail. So these are issues. Yeah. So these are issues. That's what we learned last night. These are issues that we're learning about, the fact that, our checks and balances, Andy. I mean, the fact that you're a Rhodes Scholar, and for those of you who are watching who don't know who Andy Kim is, he's the congressional representative from the great state of New Jersey, District 3. 3.
Yes,
Thank you very much for my memory. And but he's in the days after immediately January 6th. Please just Google Andy Kim cleaning up the Capitol, and you will see him in his blue suit kneel down.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, in the halls of the Capitol.
The blue suit, Andy, you've donated to the Smithsonian,
right? Exactly. So he is one of those persons of our country that we can follow example. Is just picking up the pieces, picking up each other in times of need, in times of distress, in times of ruin, that we can all we can all pitch in and do something. So I just want to lay out those props out for anybody who's not familiar with Andy Kim, because we're all from the West Coast here. But again, we're a part of this great country. Knowing that, that Andy has been there in New Jersey, doing what he needs to do in terms of just securing immigrant rights, of securing family issues, of putting the money back on the dinner table issues, as they say. Andy is one of those politicians, but those public servants that really do the job. And I just want to be able to say that I've seen him in action. I've seen him in crowds. I've seen him with other politicians. I've seen him with corporate persons who are financiers who can donate to his campaign or can donate to this cause. And he's always maintained this kind of very approachable demeanor, a person that you can always walk up and talk to and say, "Hey, Andy, what do you think's going on June 13th? The day of the former president being indicted." And he's just out. He says, "I'm not a lawyer, but these are issues that we all have to figure out, and we have to come to the table." And Andy has always been one of those persons that you can always come to the table and say, "Let's figure this out." So I just want to put it out in just layperson's terms that he's one of those politicians that really do the freaking job.
So Andy, is Congressman,
That's very kind.
Yeah. Can speak to us about this? Because this is a great point that Tamlin's making, and what we were talking about before we started this recording. There aren't a lot of good people who want to go into politics anymore.
I appreciate the kind words, and you're absolutely right, Tamlin. Like I really consider myself to be a public servant.
Yeah.
The one thing that I was mentioning this to Kelly and May, but I'm not a politician. I came up as a career public servant.
Exactly.
I worked under presidents of both parties.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my DNA of the work that I do. And look, I represented when I ran in 2018, and my district was 85% white, less than 3% Asian American that voted for Trump, and then when I won that seat, people told me there was no way I could win it again. And in 2020, Trump actually won my district again. I was on that same ballot, but I was able to win it. So it requires me to try to think about how I engage. So what I'll say is that. When I think about why is it that so many people voted for Trump, voted for me, or why is it that I've been so successful in this kind of district, I'll be honest, I think a lot of it is because I'm not a politician. I think a lot of people, see me as a public servant. They see me as the dad of 2 cute kids that are just real troublemakers. And, the last thing I'll just say is like, if ever there was a word that I would try to use to describe the kind of politics I practice, it's humility. I'm somebody that always believes that I don't have all the answers. That I want to listen to other people, experts, different people in the community, even people that very aggressively have different opinions from me. I need to hear from them. And I think too often in politics here in DC, there's the opposite of that, what I call the politics of hubris. People who think they have all the answers and they know everything that needs to happen. And if only they are in power, they would be able to fix this. The problem with that is if you think you know all the answers, then you don't actually have conversations and dialogue with people. Like, why would you have a conversation with somebody if you know all the answers? You have nothing to gain from them. So then what you end up doing is you're just trying to convert that person to your opinion and your belief. And people can pick up on that. People know when a politician is not really listening or is just trying to, convince somebody. So, I try to practice something different and show people that there's a different way to do our politics. Because honestly, right now, a lot of people in my district around the country, they're just fed up with this. Yeah. And they're fed up with, frankly, both parties. They're fed up with a lot of just the noise that's out there. And I'm hoping to show folks that there's a different way that we can do it. And that's what's keeping me in this fight right now, is just focus on that kind of question.
Okay, so when you say that most people are fed up, I think you're probably right. I mean, you see the frustration all around, but you also see the great divide, right? That there is this stark divide that's very, very palpable around the country. And so
that's right.
You are proof that you actually can bridge that gap. And so you said humility and the way of being just a real person and trying to connect with people. So when you do face somebody who is vehemently opposed to what you stand for, what you represent, and they're on the opposing side, what do you recommend? How do you engage with that person so that there can be more harmony? Because as we see it right now, it seems like there's no hope, right? You can't bridge this divide now.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
So the first thing I would say is you gotta meet them. You gotta be in the room. You gotta engage. Mm-hmm. And that's something that our politics is getting worse and worse at right now. My mom had this line when I was growing up. She said, if you're comfortable, you're not trying hard enough. And like in politics, it's the way I sort of describe it is if you're only having comfortable conversations, you're not talking to all the people you need to be talking to. I represent a district with a lot of people voted for the presidential candidate of the other party. I wake up every single day surrounded by a lot of people that have different opinions. And I put myself out there. I've now done 64 town halls in 4 years in Congress. I try to go out there and engage, and anyone can come and talk to me. But this doesn't happen that often. A lot of politicians, they only do kind of manicured kind of events. They don't take a lot of questions. And if they do, it's from people they know or things like that. And I think that's a problem. And that's a problem even in my own party. We don't always go to some of these places where we know that it's going to be tough. So that's the first thing I'll say is we got to get out there and actually have that engagement. The other thing I'll say is, when I am at a town hall and I get some tough questions, first of all, I listen. I never interrupt. In fact, when other people in the crowd might be trying to interrupt them, I stop them and I try to give that person attention. I try to repeat back some of the things they say so they know that I've listened to it, and I try to, again, say, hey, look, I'm not going to say I have all the answers, but I try to earnestly tell them kind of where I'm coming from and what I'm thinking about. And I truly believe that our country right now, we have this crisis of empathy right now. And we're struggling to understand how to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and see the world through someone else's eyes. And when I talk to people who are not like in politics, people who are not like making a living off of this stuff, a lot of times, they're telling me things and they don't always have all the information out there, or they want, when they hear a different perspective, it makes them kind of think like they're earnest. There are a lot of earnest people out there that have that when you have a real conversation and you're not, you get past or never get into that yelling and screaming match, you can have a real engagement. And that's what gives me some hope here is I know our country feels so polarized and feels so separated and divided. But what I've really come to believe is that the way I sort of describe it is that I believe that the opposite of democracy is apathy. It's if you give up, if you feel helpless. And so in my district, there are a lot of people that are kind of moving in that direction because, again, they're so fed up with politics. And frankly, again, both sides of the aisle. So I see the world less about Democrat versus Republican, more about those who are engaged and involved and those who are not. And the ones that are engaged and involved, they are very, often very, divided in their opinions and very steadfast in it. But there's a lot of people outside of that space that are trying to figure this out. They don't know where to turn to for accurate information or thoughtful thoughtful opinions and guidance in different ways. And it's important that we don't treat them in that kind of same way and in that same vein, and we give opportunity for them to engage. But sometimes if you come at them too hard and you try to make assumptions about it, they'll actually dig in deeper on some of their issues and some of their viewpoints, just because of how toxic things have gotten. Yeah. So those are some of the ways that I try to engage.
As someone who tries to be a little bit more in the middle, I find it hard to know who to believe, because you can always find information supporting both sides, right? Yeah. And there's only so much time in the day that I have to listen to all sides. I mean, I lately I've been one of those who's been guilty of just tuning things out, for the sake of my mental health. But I find it very difficult, looking for sources that are not biased, that are, that will just give me facts without opinions. Sometimes opinions are helpful, but I just don't feel like there's any kind of news source to ever listen to anymore.
I struggle with the same thing, Kelly. I mean, it's there's not some magic website or magic book that we have here in Congress. We don't have something here in the Capitol that just says the facts, and that we can engage. So I have to do that same digging, and have my team do that digging. And like I said, it's important for me to hear from people in my own district too about what they're getting at. And what I kind of get at with this is it's okay to embrace some of that humility of recognizing we don't have all the answers, and engage in that capacity. It's okay to have that humility to understand that maybe someone else has a better idea than you on something. And so I'm just trying to say that's fine. That's okay. But it just means that, we have to do the work to go find out deeper, what's out there. That's where that question about the apathy comes in. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know where to turn to, or things are so complicated, so why bother? Right. Well, I'm tired. I'm not going to dive in deeper. But it's our duty to, as Americans, as people here in this country, to dive in deeper and to do that deeper engagement, and to fight past it. Those that benefit from the disinformation, they want you to just only have that surface level knowledge. Right. They want you to just only get your information off of, whatever, meme is going around social media or whatnot. But it's important that we don't give into that and we dive in and do our own homework.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, though, and I always tell my journalism students this when I teach, is that it's the responsibility is on us, the individual, to be responsible consumers of information. But that's a heavy load now because of everything that's going on and all the disinformation and misinformation. But if I may ask this, though, for you, because you are a man of integrity and trying to live so humbly and serve humbly, again, that's atypical, unfortunately, in politics. Let's be real.
I mean, most of those people don't get voted in.
Right, well, yeah, or they don't, or it's very difficult to get anything done because they're having to fight this uphill battle constantly. So for you being in the House, I'm just gonna call it. I mean, there's some lunatics in the House. Okay, it's like the loony bin sometimes. Let's just be honest. It must be on a daily basis for you. I'm dying to know. I mean, how do you tolerate that kind of extremism? That must be very challenging for you to be serving with that kind of extremism. Give us a little insight or information on how you deal with that and what you observe.
Yeah. I mean, look, part of it is, with the work that I did before in national security, there was kind of this line that I remember I learned, when I worked out in Afghanistan, I learned this line, which is, you fight on the battlefield on which you're dropped, not the one you wish you had. And it just, for me, there's just a reality of this situation and just kind of this recognition that this is how it is. This is this kind of recognition that we live in a historic moment. When I think about this and think about all the craziness that's out there, I think about actually this woman who asked me this question. She's like, "Oh, there's so much craziness happening in Congress. Like, you must feel like you chose the wrong time to run for office." But I actually told her that this is exactly why I stepped up to run is because of this situation. I never thought I'd run for office before, but I had a boss at the State Department who taught me this line that I just really hold dear. He said, "You don't have good government unless you have good people working in government." And it just stuck with me. And just this idea, because like oftentimes government, it can feel like it's just some big machine, like some big entity that just like, just kind of produces and gears turn, but it's not. It's about people. And so if you have crazy, narcissistic, egotistical people in government, you will have a crazy, narcissistic, or egotistical government. It is a reflection of that. And so, for me, I know full well I'm not going to be able to heal and fix the politics around the world, but I can do my part. And what I can at least do is that I am, 1 out of 435 members of the House. And what I can at least do my best is I'm going to protect this seat with my life. And I'm going to make sure that no crazy person is at least able to control this seat, and that's my job. My job is to defend the seat and to try to be, a thoughtful leader moving forward and show it's possible. And hopefully that helps other people recognize that this is doable, that we have to get engaged. This kind of idea that I always said is like, I can't assume that someone else will fight my fights for me. That I have to think about what I want to do. What am I willing to put on the line? So yes, you're right. I'm definitely working with a lot of people that I never expected I would have to kind of call as colleagues. But I can't let that deter me because, my goal here, the way I sort of describe it is like a singular goal that I'm trying to accomplish in my career. So it revolves around a singular question, which is, how do we heal this country? That's the question I'm now going to dedicate the rest of my life to trying to solve. And I can't let other personalities or other people kind of get in the way or ruin that, because too much is at stake. I got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I honestly am very worried about what kind of America they're going to grow up in. And I have to believe that my kids are not doomed to grow up in a divided America. I have to believe that things can get better, but it doesn't just happen on its own. But if we seed the ground, if I leave Congress or other people who are trying to be thoughtful public servants leave Congress, it just creates more space where some of that crazy can come into. So we really have to make sure that we're engaging and staying engaged and not giving into that apathy.
I feel like we're being so bombarded, right, with all of this craziness and, division and whatnot. And you've only been in politics for how many years now? Since
6 years now. In
6 years now.
Over 4, yeah.
What so far has been your proudest moment in these 6 years?
That's a great question. I was really proud. In terms of the election side, I was really proud when I won re-election despite Trump winning. There were only, I think, 7 Democrats that year that won districts that Trump won. That's it. So out of 200 plus Democrats in the country, only 7 of us were able to defy partisanship and win. And it was just like, again, it was, I became the first Democrat to win my district 2 times in a row since before the Civil War. And again, this is a district that's, 85% white, less than 3% Asian American. And I'm just really proud that I can show that an Asian American, we can win not just in Asian American heavy areas, but we can win anywhere. I have every bit as much right to represent this district as anybody else. And like that was really meaningful. So I was very proud of that on the electoral side. On the legislative side, I've been fighting on a lot of legislation, but one that I was really proud of was one that I wrote. I kept hearing from my constituents, especially my seniors in my district, just about the high cost of prescription drugs. Right. And, they were telling me, this guy was crying, telling me how he pays, $500 plus a month for his prescription drugs. And, he felt like he wasn't delivering the kind of life for his wife and retirement and things like that. They were telling me how they were like cutting their pills in half. So I wrote a piece of legislation that would cap out-of-pocket costs for seniors when it comes to their prescription drugs. Was able to work with others to get that part of the Inflation Reduction Act and passed into law. So, I mean, this idea that first started just kind of talking to seniors in my district is now law of the land, and it's going to be implemented, I think, in about a year. And at that point, no senior in America on Medicare will ever have to pay more than $2,000 a year, never more than $166 a month. Ever. No matter how many pills they take, no matter what conditions they have, it creates that kind of stability that things are not going to get catastrophic in terms of that. That's real change. That's real change. And, hearing from these seniors that their lives are going to be changed and transformed, thousands of dollars a year back in their pockets. I'm proud of that.
That's wonderful.
As you should be, as you should be. I mean, that's where politics can really work. You're proving that as a politician, as an elected politician by the people, you are for the people, right? That's what this country is based on. Unfortunately, we're getting away from that, but thank God for people like you, Congressman Kim, who you're sticking by, why you were elected and what your job is to represent the people. I know we just have a couple more minutes, so Tamlin, please.
I just wanted to just echo our thanks and all our listeners or our watchers' thanks too, because when Andy said that he has a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, I know that on the campaign trail for re-election, his kids actually knocked on doors with him, for him. And come on, it's just like, literally to echo what Andy says, you have to learn how to engage on the congressional floor, on the Senate floor, on the Capitol floors. You really do have to start, door to door. I mean, in your own district. I mean, the idea that Andy is a humble public servant is, his motto is humility. Suffice it to say, that's not sexy enough. Sometimes that's not, media savvy enough. But that's where the real work comes. And I think when you invest that much time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears, time and love away from your family, because I know you go back and forth from Jersey to Washington, that we're just so very thankful to have, a representative like you, and that there's so many people who get to watch you do what you do, literally walk across the hall and shake hands and go, hey, can we work on something? To be able to watch that is an example of just work in action. And you really literally put your work into action. They're not words in action. You're not at the microphone. You're not on the TV, spilling and spewing what your rhetoric is. You actually put your work into action. And
he's walking the walk.
Walking the walk.
Yeah, there was this line that was that I've been thinking about a lot, that shaped a lot of how I try to operate. We all know the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
We all, memorize that ending.
Yes, you do.
But there's a line earlier in the speech that it was kind of one that I never even I've read the speech so many times, but I never even really internalized this line. But it's one that's become so defining for me. He says, let us not try to quench our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.
Yeah.
And I just find it to be such a remarkable line because, this speech is about where are we going, this vision for America, what we're trying to do. But he reminds us with that one line that it's not just about what you're trying to do, but it's also how you conduct yourself along the way and how you treat people along the way. And so, for me, I don't want politics to become this blood sport. I don't want it to be just kind of just get your thing across the line at whatever the cost. I really do think that so much of what we're missing right now, is about just that decency and that respect. Yes. And I say that, but I just also want to say I'm not being naive here. I'm not trying. This does not mean that I'm going to be, weak in negotiations or this and that. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in and for values. That line that my boss said, that you don't have good government unless you have good people working in government. The next line that he says is you can be a good person, still have sharp elbows too. There's still a way to be able to push there.
Yes.
But I want people to feel and understand that like empathy is a strength, not a weakness.
Yes.
That
absolutely,
that service is important. That humility does not mean that you're indecisive.
Yes.
And so again, that's what I'm trying to do. But you're right, it's hard. I'm away from my kids about 150 days a year because of this job, and I miss them terribly. I mean, it really makes me feel like I'm missing so much of their lives. At 5 and 7, they're just growing and developing so much. But again, I have to believe that me doing this is my way of trying to be a good dad for them, trying to bring about the kind of stability and future that they deserve, that all of our kids and grandkids deserve. So that's what I'm going to try to do. But my wife and I were very clear at the outset when we started this path that we're going to make sure this job doesn't change who I am, who we are as a family. That this job the way I sort of say is like, this is a good job. It's not that good. It's not that good. It's not that good that I'm going to like twist and contort myself and abandon my values in order to keep it. Like it's not worth it. So I'm going to just kind of do the job the best as I can. And then hopefully have a good chance to be able to do it for a long time to come. And so thank you for just paying attention to what I'm up to. I really appreciate it.
We hope you keep going, and you're setting such an incredible example for your children, your family, your constituents, for the country, for all of us. So we thank you, Congressman Kim, for your service, your continued service, because you're right. It's civility, it's humility, it's decency. We need to get back to that. But you are definitely setting the example. So we appreciate it. On a day when the sort of the worst of us is being focused on, we are highlighting some of the best of us. So thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
Thank you.
So thank you so very much, Congressman Andy Kim, for joining May, Kelly, and I for that wonderful conversation. And to, again, like we said, is to really be re-inspired by the hope we each have in ourselves as well as in each other. That's the idea that we see that hope. We can always be reminded that just to look into someone else's eyes and reach our hand across the literal aisle. I can only imagine how many times that happens in a day for a congressperson. Yeah. But it's literally to get your sleeves up and say, what can we do to make this country better? And Congressman Kim is definitely one of those kinds of public servants who really actually gets that work done. And I'm just so thankful to be in this nation that he gets to serve. Way over there in New Jersey for us LA girls, but he's an example of what it means to really
do the work.
Be somebody who works and is of service.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
Yeah, like we said, he walks the walk, right? He's not just talking the talk. And we need more people like that. I mean,
I was just going to say that we do. We need
really
more people like that in Congress, in
government, in
politics in general. People that we feel like are not just there for themselves, right? Exactly. And their egos and their narcissism or whatever it is that's led them to politics. It's such a scary place right now.
It is.
Politics. That I think it scares so many of the good people away.
Absolutely.
I mean, who wants to enter, such a disgusting, dirty ring of politics right now?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really, it takes somebody either completely egotistical or somebody who is so passionate about just making this country better. For everyone, including future generations,
and that's why Congressman Kim was like, "Look, I got kids. I want this country to be better for them." So
I'm thinking of others. I mean, what you said, Kelly and May, is like someone completely egotistical, like I think our former president is, versus somebody who is humble and filled with humility and of service to think of others, to think of the nation, to think of his district, to think of our country, and think of our world in terms of what he or she or they can do in order to better how we live together.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's got to be tremendous pressure. It's got to be exhausting. So I
Can
really
you
hope.
imagine?
No, I can't imagine. That's why I was going to say to him, and I'm going to say this to him now, is that please don't burn out. Please take care of yourself, because I think this job must be tremendously exhausting mentally, physically, spiritually, in every way. So hopefully he is taking good care of himself so that he can, he can run the marathon.
Yes,
and be able
yes.
to kind of keep going at it. So, so we're so grateful that he came on to speak to us on this very monumental day. We will see what happens moving forward. Hopefully better days ahead. Fingers crossed, right?
Brighter days ahead. And I know it's a long road, but again, as long as, we just have people like him and people like you, May, and people like you, Kelly, who get out there and speak to what you believe in and how you can work towards things in terms of bettering our world. I think this is something that I have been remiss in doing, is like just to acknowledge what your efforts are out there, because it's hard.
Are you even, Tamlin? I'm always seeing you out there. Tamlin, you are always out there engaging and representing. And
absolutely. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know I do my part. I think I just want to acknowledge how I see you two do your parts as well. And, in all the public appearances that each of the three of us make, is like to be able to remind everyone else that May and Kelly are totally approachable. And we don't have all the answers, but we're willing to listen. And it's to practice. It's to practice engagement. It's totally that kind of willingness to be out there and to listen and to just say, what can we do?
Yeah.
What could
my goal is just to spread the aloha.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. Spread the aloha, spread the love.
I love that. I love that.
Island girl.
That is a great way to end this episode. We are going to continue spreading the aloha. So love you, ladies. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. So until next time, bye, everyone.
Bye.